In Nigel Farage's view, why is the suppression of conservative viewpoints so dangerous to the functioning of a civilized democracy? And how does President Trump differ from other world leaders in his stance on China? This is American Thought Leaders, and I'm Jekielek. In the special episode of American Thought Leaders at CPAC Australia, the head of the Chinese edition of the Australian Epoch Times, Xiao, hosts an interview with Nigel Farage, the leader of the UK Brexit Party. We discuss the China threat, the Hong Kong protests, suppression of free speech, Trump 2020, and the Labour Party's attempt to ban Raheem Kassam from entering Australia.
Welcome, Nigel.
Thank you very much indeed.
To Australia. Thank you very much for coming here. And my first question to you is that your party is so successful, so quick time frame, that is it due to the organization's structure?
It's due to a couple of things. Firstly, I'm quite a well-known quantity. I think people know what I stand for. And I think, the fact that I decided to re-engage the way that I did gave it a bit of a head start. I think the huge level of frustration that exists amongst millions of Britons who see, an open pledge to honour the result of the referendum that's been dishonoured. And thirdly, I think that the way from the beginning of the Brexit Party that we used video footage, the way we, every day when I was out on the street with the candidates, we were making films, engaging the public, there was a sense of energy, excitement. We did the big rallies, the big music. We even had fireworks a couple of times on the stages. So there was a sense of energy and excitement, but coupled with, quite skillful use of social media. You could not at any point in previous political history in Britain have launched a new party that could have won an election within 6 weeks. It could never, ever have happened. Unimaginable. Circumstances unique. My role in this particular debate, quite unique. But social media means the world can move a lot more quickly than it ever did. And of course, we've been used to the BBC for decades setting the benchmark for political debate. And what we saw in this election was we didn't need the BBC. Very interesting.
Yeah. Are you concerned about recent Hong Kong movement that every day hundreds of thousands of people going to the street and protesting against the Communist China's rule, and that one day, given the nature of Communist China, that they might use military power?
Well, look, I suppose the calculation for them is, do they want another Tiananmen Square on their hands? Because that, I think, is what we're talking about. Now, we've seen the threats, not even very thinly veiled threats over the course of the last week. I find it difficult to believe that China would be that stupid, but anything's possible.
Given that the Trump tough stance on China and Britain and other allies united behind it, I suppose you're right. Because China
and I think Trump does make a difference in all of this. I think Trump's presence on the world stage, the fact that he's voiced many of the concerns about China that others have felt but not been brave enough to actually say. I think Trump on the world stage does make a difference. Look, there is a deal here, a very clear deal set out that until 2047. Things should be carrying on pretty much as they are. China clearly is in very, very open breach of that. And I think we need to bring the rest of the world together more strongly behind the rights of Hong Kong citizens. And at the moment, I think the world's been too weak on this, frankly.
I'm not sure whether you have seen a politician from Australia, Andrew
Hastings,
comment about, China's rise compared to the rise of Nazi Germany.
Well, I don't think comments like that ever. Do you know what? There is no comparison with Hitler or Nazi Germany that ever works, that ever leads to a logical debate. So let's just bypass that. Right. But what we do know is that China is growing in power hugely, seeking to exert that power through many parts of the world. Not, I think, in terms of the international rule book, necessarily playing by it. Yeah. And I think, as I say, Trump is the first global leader to call this out, and that should give encouragement to others to stand up and say and do the right. You know, David Cameron was our Prime Minister. You know, who pays him now? Where does his money come from now? Well, should we try China? You know, I mean, let's just look at these influences. Right. I mean, let's just look at the way the world is working.
Yes.
So we need to take a different path.
Similar thing happened to the former Australian politicians as well. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you know, we can see what's going on here.
Talking about that, based on that, what would you do if you actually win the election of the British?
Well, look, let's see what happens. I mean, at the moment, I think the truth of it is that the as you said at the start of this interview, the formation of the Brexit Party, and rather like a child's toy, a jack-in-the-box, we lifted the lid and boom, up came the Brexit Party. We've completely reset the agenda in British politics. The British Conservative Party knew that unless they took the rhetoric and the platform upon which I won the European elections, that they were effectively finished. We've now got a British Prime Minister who is saying the right things, and we'll see in 82 days' time, on October the 31st, whether he does the right things. So let's see. If they drop the ball, if Brexit doesn't get delivered, then I do think in a general election the Brexit Party could easily win it. And so, to answer your question, there's quite a few ifs. Yes. that we need to get through, and it would be maybe quite presumptuous. But and I'm going to go back to this point, that Hong Kong would be how we deal with Hong Kong, what we say to China over Hong Kong. That's the starting point.
Lastly, what is your comment about the Australian Labor Senator calling for the ban of entry of Raheem Kassam?
Well, Raheem Kassam worked for me for some time, so I can understand why people are upset with him. I often am. Look, you know, Raheem is a commentator. He can be a bit outspoken, but there's nothing he's ever said or done that is not within the reasonable limits of what free speech and democratic debate is all about. And what you've seen here with this demand is something that is going on right across the Western world. We see it in politics, we see it in media, we even see it in our universities, where the demand for safe space means that certain speakers that might upset the thought processes of others are banned from universities. It is part of the new anti-democratic left that, rather than listening to a different point of view, disagreeing with a different point of view, challenging a different point of view, they actually want to ban a different point of view. And I think this actually takes us into quite dangerous territory, because for civilized democracy to work, you have to have a concept called the loser's consent. The loser has to accept they've lost the election, or for the moment, they've lost the argument. And this fits in with this whole pattern of where the globalist left are going. They actually want to ban free speech. They actually want to outlaw people with different opinions, and it's why we must be even more determined on our side of the debate that we don't just win the odd election, we don't just win the odd referendum, we have to go on winning perpetually.
And you, at one stage in the US, standing on the stage, one of the first predicting the win of Donald Trump.
Yes.
During the
I did. Yeah, I did. I said, I think Trump's going to win the election, and people thought I'd finally gone mad. But there you are.
Would you predict the same thing easily the next one?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, God, yes. Oh, he isn't just going to win next year. He's going to win by a mile. Because, you know, part of this reaction to Brexit and Trump has been this new left, like here in Australia, who want to ban alternative points of view. And that may play to a small, intolerant urban youth that appears to be around now. But in the middle of our countries, in the broader swathe of society, this stuff doesn't work. The left have made themselves, they're increasingly making themselves unelectable. No, I think Trump, barring a major upset in the economy, and you never know with these things, but barring that, I think Trump will win next November and win by a much bigger number than last time round. I hope so.
Do you believe that in the end, Western traditional values will prevail over socialism or communism?
Yeah, I mean, you've got a couple of things going on here. You've got socialism, communism that have rebranded themselves through environmentalism, and that does have an appeal to a young audience. But you've also got the other trend of globalism, which is effectively the taking away from people of the ability through the ballot box to determine their own futures and to transfer that decision-making power, you know, to this sort of new order, this new sort of global entity. It's almost a battle of democracy versus bureaucracy. I'm an optimist. I think in the end, good wins.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nigel. Thanks.